A few years ago, I was staring at my bank account with that sinking feeling. You know the one. Rent was coming up, my credit card balance was creeping higher, and I was seriously questioning how I was ever going to get ahead, let alone feel free. Not rich, just free. Like I didn't have to constantly worry about money, second-guess every purchase, or feel trapped in a job I didn't love just to stay afloat. If you've ever felt that way, stressed, stuck, maybe even a little ashamed, you're not alone. And I want you to hear this loud and clear. You can change your entire financial future by making a few key choices. I'm not talking about winning the lottery or creating the next big app. I'm talking about simple, doable decisions that anyone, yes, anyone, can start making today. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 3 specific choices that completely changed my relationship with money and eventually led me to financial independence. Not in a retired at 30 and bought a Tesla kind of way. I'm talking about real freedom, the kind where your bills are covered, you have options, and you finally breathe a little easier, knowing your future isn't tied to someone else's paycheck. Now, I'm not going to give it all away just yet, but I'll tell you this. None of these choices involved a high-paying job, luck, or even perfect timing. In fact, the first choice I made happened when I was broke, living paycheck to paycheck, and had no clue what I was doing with my money. I just knew I was tired of feeling powerless. So I started with one simple mindset shift, paying myself first. And I know that phrase gets thrown around a lot, but let me explain how it actually played out for me and why it made such a huge difference. At the time, every dollar I earned was already spoken for. Rent, groceries, bills, random impulse buys. By the time I even thought about saving, it was too late. Sound familiar? But then I made a rule. No matter how tight things got, the first bill I paid was to myself, even if it was just $10. I set up an automatic transfer the same day my paycheck hit, and I treated it like it wasn't even mine to spend. And let me tell you, watching that little stash grow, even slowly, started changing how I saw money. I stopped seeing saving as a sacrifice and started seeing it as a small act of power. Like, hey, maybe I'm not as stuck as I thought I was. That one choice made every other decision easier, because once you get a taste of that financial breathing room, even if it's tiny at first, you start to crave more. You start looking at your habits differently. You start asking better questions like, do I really need this? Or, what if I put this money to work instead? And that brings us to the next decision that took this whole journey to another level, because saving alone wasn't going to be enough. So once I got into the rhythm of paying myself first, no matter how small the amount, I started to realize something. Saving was just the beginning. It gave me some stability, sure, but if I wanted real freedom, the kind where your money works for you, I had to do more than just stockpile cash in a savings account. And this is where choice number 2 came in. I decided to learn how to invest. Now, I know that word can feel intimidating. For the longest time, I thought investing was only for people who were already rich or had finance degrees. I pictured stock charts, fast-talking Wall Street types, and apps I didn't understand. But here's the truth. Investing isn't about being an expert. It's about getting started, early, even imperfectly. I still remember sitting at my laptop watching a beginner-friendly video about index funds. I paused it probably 6 times, Googled a bunch of terms I didn't understand, and almost talked myself out of it entirely. But eventually, I opened up an account, picked a simple low-cost index fund, and invested my first $100. That was it. Nothing fancy. But I'll never forget how it felt. I had just taken a piece of my paycheck and turned it into something that could grow on its own, even while I slept. And that's when the light bulb went off. I didn't have to work harder for money. I had to make smarter choices with the money I already had. Every dollar I invested was like planting a tiny seed that could turn into something way bigger down the line. And the earlier I planted it, the more time it had to grow. It wasn't about getting rich quick. It was about giving myself options later. Here's what made this real for me. I tracked my net worth, not obsessively, just monthly. I'd log in, see how things were growing, and slowly but surely, I began to see the gap widen between what I owed and what I owned. That gap, that's your freedom gap. The wider it gets, the more freedom you have to say no to things you don't want and yes to the life you actually care about. But here's the part no one talks about. While I was learning to invest and grow my money, I was also doing something else quietly in the background. Something that seemed almost too boring to matter, but ended up being one of the smartest things I ever did. I made a conscious choice to simplify my lifestyle. Not in a minimalist, extreme way, like I still had coffee, I still went out with friends, but I started questioning what I was spending money on and why. I realized that half the stuff I thought I needed was just noise, temporary boosts, stuff I bought because I was bored, stressed, or trying to keep up. So I cut the fluff. Not everything. Just the stuff that didn't actually make my life better. And instead of feeling deprived, I felt, honestly, liberated. Because every time I chose to spend less on something I didn't care about, I was really choosing to buy back my time, my future, and eventually my independence. And once I combined that with the habit of saving and investing consistently, things started to move faster than I expected. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was building something. So by this point, I was saving regularly, investing what I could, and simplifying my lifestyle, not to be frugal for the sake of it, but to make room for what actually mattered. And those two choices alone created real momentum. But the third choice, that's the one that made everything click. I decided to build something of my own. Now let me explain. I'm not talking about launching $1 million startup or quitting your job tomorrow to become a full-time entrepreneur. For me, it started small. I looked at the skills I already had, nothing fancy, just things I enjoyed doing or that people said I was good at. And I found a way to offer them in exchange for a little extra cash. In the beginning, I was freelancing on the side. A couple of hours a week turned into a few $100 a month. That might not sound like a lot, but here's the thing. That money wasn't tied to my day job. I wasn't trading it for hours on a clock or waiting for someone to approve a raise. It was mine, created by me. And that shift, from being 100% dependent on a paycheck to having even a little bit of income I controlled, was game-changing. It gave me a taste of what real financial independence looks like. Not just having enough money saved, but knowing that if I needed to, I could make more. I could create income. I wasn't stuck. I wasn't at the mercy of layoffs or corporate policies or someone else's schedule. I had options. And that's really what this all comes down to. Choices that give you options. Saving was about creating stability. Investing was about creating growth. And building something of my own, that was about creating freedom. The best part? None of these things happened overnight. I didn't go from broke to independent in 6 months. It took time, but every small step built on the last. And the earlier you start, the easier it gets. Not because the work disappears, but because you get stronger. You build habits, confidence, and clarity, and that changes everything. So if you're watching this and thinking, yeah, but my situation's different, trust me, I get it. I started with debt. I started with doubts. But the moment I stopped waiting for the perfect time or the perfect income and just started where I was, everything began to shift. You don't need to do all of this at once. Just pick one place to begin. Set aside $20. Open a free investing account. Offer a skill online. Simplify one thing in your budget. You'll be surprised how quickly that one step leads to the next. If you've made it this far in the video, I really hope something here resonated with you. Let me know in the comments. Which of these 3 choices do you want to start with, or maybe already have? I'd love to hear your story. And if this video gave you something useful, hit that like button. It helps more people find this kind of content. And subscribe if you want more real, honest videos about getting smarter, building freedom, and designing a life that actually feels good to live. Just remember, financial independence isn't a fantasy. It's just a series of small, intentional choices. And you're more than capable of making them. You've got this.